Everyone, and welcome to the prevention and messaging session. Up first, we have Amber Smith, who is the statewide litter prevention coordinator with the Department of Ecology. Amber, are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's share my screen here. And do I need to swap the presenter view? Are you guys seeing the right slides here? Probably not.
Yeah, you need to do presenter view. Or not presenter view. There you go.
That looks good on your end?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Amber Smith. I'm the statewide litter prevention coordinator with the Washington Department of Ecology. And litter is definitely a hot topic in Washington right now, especially since the pandemic. I think the impacts of the COVID pandemic really highlighted an existing litter problem that Washington has had for quite some time. It just became much, much more visible when all of us were impacted by not being able to have our crews out on the road. And Heather, I'm wondering if you can take me off being a co-presenter so I don't hear the doorbell.
Will do.
Thanks. So we cannot pick our way out of Washington's litter problem. We really need to begin investing and coming together to prevent litter from happening in the first place. And that's what I'm really passionate about and that I'm here to talk about today. For a little background, the funding that Ecology gets from the legislature, there'll be a presentation on funding and some background tomorrow. But back in 2009, a big portion of our funding for litter pickup and prevention began getting diverted for other uses. And so from 2009 to 2019, Washington State did not have a budget for litter prevention. And I believe that's part of the reason why litter has increased over time, or we believe litter has increased over time. In 2019, the legislature restored our funding. I was hired, we got to work on bringing back a really comprehensive litter prevention strategy for the state. And this last session, we were also given some supplemental funding for ongoing litter prevention work. So we are very excited to finally have the funding and support we need to start addressing this problem more upstream. So in terms of changing behaviors, there's a lot of research out there about what works best and what doesn't. And so when we were getting together to develop a new litter prevention campaign for the state, we really wanted to use best practices in behavior change. And that is social marketing or community-based social marketing. That practice is really using traditional marketing techniques blended with behavior change science in order to really make sure you get a good return on investment and you really are going to see results in the long run. Social marketing tells us that information alone does not change behavior. You can't just hand out brochures or do advertising and expect people to change their behavior. That doesn't work. You really need to take the time to understand who your priority audience or audiences are, what they see are the barriers and the benefits of changing a behavior, find out what would motivate them, what would incentivize a behavior change, use some evidence-based behavior change tools, like the use of signing commitments, prompts, motivational tools, behavior change tools, using social norms and social diffusion. Those are some tools you can use in your social marketing toolbox. You always want to pilot something before you roll it out throughout your community or your state. You want to evaluate your results in a continuous improvement process. And so we use this social marketing framework in developing the new campaign that I'll talk about. On the right-hand side, you can see that people kind of fall in this bell curve. Off to the left, the Show Me group, that smaller percentage of people will do the right thing, will change their behavior with information alone. So there is a small group of people that will do that. You just need to tell them what to do and they're on board and they're going to do that. Most people fall into this Help Me group, and that's where social marketing comes in. And then there's always going to be the Make Me group on the other end, and that's where we get into laws and fines and other things. They just will not change their behavior without other types of interventions. And tomorrow, Nancy, we will be talking more about social marketing as well. Also, when we were looking at coming up with a new litter prevention campaign for the state, we wanted to use a positive culture framework. There was a lot going on in 2019, a lot of social issues happening, and our former campaign, Litter and It Will Hurt, no longer would resonate with what was going on in 2019. Litter and It Will Hurt, some of you have been around for a while, might be familiar with that past litter prevention campaign. It again ended in 2009 when we lost our funding. And initially we were thinking maybe we'll just bring that back because it was very successful in its time. It did result in a 25% reduction in roadside litter. But right off the bat, we recognized for a variety of reasons that messaging just wasn't going to resonate today. There's also a lot of research about using a positive culture framework. Montana State University, their Center for, I think it's Safety Culture, they have a lot of information on their website around using this positive culture framework. Traffic safety are kind of pioneers of this, and we're shifting our messaging so we avoid creating divisions between groups, the us and the them, not just addressing the make me group in our campaign messaging, and trying to increase positive peer pressure and increase conversations and social norms around these issues. So we also use this framework in developing the new campaign. So we got our partners together. We worked with C+C, a consulting firm out of Seattle. We worked closely with the Washington State Patrol, the Department of Transportation, and the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. We did a pretty comprehensive survey with over 1,100 Washingtonians and did expert interviews, and every step of the process, we did focus groups with our priority audience, those who litter on Washington roadways, and we did message testing. So before we came out with developing our commercials, our key messages, we did message testing with our priority audience. And this is a bilingual campaign, so we wanted to make sure we had both English and Spanish speakers participating in these focus groups and message testing sessions, that we had benchmarks for diversity. A couple key things I'll point out. Our research shows that males ages 18 to 44 are our priority audience, who we're talking to, who's most likely to be littering on Washington roadways. And we have a great social norm on our side. The majority of Washingtonians, over 75% of us, don't litter. And so that is great that we have that social norm. Most people do the right thing in Washington. So we developed the We Keep Washington Litter Free umbrella brand, we call it. You can find that campaign. There's 2 websites there. There's an English and a Spanish campaign landing pages. And we're using the hashtag LitterFreeWA. So look for that on social media. Start using that on social media when you are having posts around litter prevention, showing your volunteers your program in action. Start using that hashtag and let's build some momentum around that. So we launched We Keep Washington Litter Free last spring. We developed a commercial that we ran. We did some advertising and some social media outreach. And this really serves again as that umbrella brand for all the behavior specific campaigns to fall underneath. Last spring, we launched Secure Your Load for Safer Roads. This behavior change campaign is obviously specific to people driving with unsecured loads on Washington roadways. This is not only a litter issue, it's a safety issue. We've already had multiple fatalities in 2022. And it's estimated that up to 40% of roadside litter comes from unsecured loads and things blowing or falling out of vehicles. So we worked very closely with our partners. We did a lot of advertising, targeted advertising on all platforms, extensive PR. We got lots of news coverage. We worked with big box home improvement stores like Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace across the state. We trained their employees. They helped to promote the campaign and proper load securing tips, and they had product end caps to display a variety of load securing equipment that could be used. We also worked with a number of local governments on CargoNet giveaway events in their communities. We had our local government partners measure the number of unsecured loads coming into their solid waste facilities before the campaign and after the campaign. And we did find an immediate reduction in unsecured loads. And we also worked with the State Patrol. We provided funding for them to do additional emphasis patrols, looking for unsecured roads on our roadways and doing education as well as writing citations for that. So we just finished up our second year of that. Again, very successful. We worked with another round of local governments on the CargoNet giveaway events. They're doing their pre and post measurement again as well. And I definitely like to encourage local governments to be spreading the word about this campaign through your solid waste facilities. Consider CargoNet giveaway events that with our priority audience, they said that would be very motivating and a tool they would use. And we did surveys with participants that showed they had a very good experience. They learned a lot. They're talking with others about securing their load, and they're now securing their load all the time or much more often than they were before. So excited to have this on board. Again, we're using the hashtag #SecureLoadsWA for that. So if you're doing outreach on social media, use that hashtag and help us build momentum around that. And the most recent campaign that underneath the We Keep Washington Litter Free umbrella is Not Littering, Simple as That. This is really targeted at the commonly littered items on our roadway, the beverage containers, the food-related packaging. We did a pilot just this May, so a couple months ago we did a pilot, and we worked with Fred Meyer, 4 locations that were located in lower income areas where we gave out reusable vehicle litter bags. We did a survey with people to see how they like the bags, if it has helped them change their behavior. We learned from that, had a very, very successful pilot. We're now going to prepare for a big statewide campaign launch in September. And we're going to be expanding the vehicle litter bag distribution to all Fred Meyer locations across the state. We're looking for other partnership opportunities to do that, including working with local sports teams. And this is something that, you know, nonprofits and local governments could get involved with as well. I'm happy to share the information about the vendor we use to purchase these reusable vehicle litter bags. And if we're all ordering, we could potentially get a discount on those. But this is something that you could do as part of your education and outreach. Our research showed that our priority audience will change their behavior by using these bags. So it is a good intervention for us. You can go to the website to check out the new commercial that we'll be showing. And again, we're using that hashtag #LitterFreeWA for that campaign as well. As part of all of this work, we put together a litter prevention partner toolkit. So you all can use the resources. You can find this on our website. It's linked to many different litter prevention pages on Ecology's website, but the 2 or 3 main campaign pages, you can find a link to that. You can download these resources. It includes our social marketing plan, so you can see how we've laid out these messaging and intervention and how these campaigns came about. There are also a lot of design files in there for outreach materials. There are new highway signs. We're working with WashDOT, that picture in the bottom right, Keep Washington Litter Free. We're working with them right now to put those up along state highways. They're replacing the old litter and it will hurt highway signs. So if you're a local government and still have the old litter and it will hurt reporting hotline signs up, get the new sign put up and replaced if you can. We'd love to see that. lots of social media content, website content, window clings, which help with that social norm and social diffusion, billboards, ads, all of the campaign advertising assets are on there for you to use in your own programs. And if you have an idea for something that's not in there, let me know, because we do have a budget to continue to build on this resource over time. So in May, we did the pilot for Simple as That, and ran the new commercial on social media, piloted the reusable giveaways, our reusable vehicle litter bags. We evaluated that through a survey and through our partners. We launched the annual Secure Your Load for Safer Roads campaign in June. So every June around the National Secure Your Load Day, which is June 6th, we'll be running the Secure Your Load for Safer Roads campaign. So put it on your calendar every June. Help us to amplify that message throughout the state. Use our resources, use the hashtag. We will do comprehensive advertising. We encourage local governments and others to do the CargoNet giveaways. We'll keep working with our retail partners to make it convenient for folks to get the equipment they need to do the right thing. And we're going to continue to evaluate that over time. And then coming up for the month of September, we're launching, again, the Simple as That campaign, distributing vehicle litter bags. There'll be statewide advertising on all platforms. Again, WashDOT will have messaging on their highway signs. We're going to be advertising at 450 gas stations across the state, both the pump top advertising and the video player at the pump, and window clings on the door or on the coolers. So incorporating that is a great place for people to dispose of trash rather than doing it on the road. And again, expanded all Fred Meyer locations, but looking for more partners as well. And all of you can help support this campaign by using the toolkit and maybe looking at also distributing litter bags if you can do that. So that is a very, very quick overview of the We Keep Washington Litter Free umbrella and the 2 behavior change campaigns we have underneath that. There'll be time for question and answer here in just a few minutes, and thanks for helping out.
Thanks, Amber. So up next, we have Renee Bader. She is a professor of psychology with SUNY Plattsburgh.
All right, let's see here. Does it look good?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, great. So my name is Renee Bader, and I'm a professor in the psychology department at SUNY Plattsburgh, and I'm really excited to talk to everyone about behavior change science applied to littering. And I want to start out talking about the power of conformity. We've got that phrase, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and it's been found over and over again that the presence of litter is linked to higher rates of littering. And that has been found not just in field studies without any kind of intervention, where researchers observe the setting and pedestrians and notice that when there's more litter in the setting, the pedestrians are more likely to litter, but also in controlled experiments where the setting is manipulated and pedestrians are given a prompt to litter or not litter. In both cases, we find a strong effect that the presence of litter is related to more littering. I've always been intrigued by the broken windows theory, which is kind of an application of conformity, finding that evidence of misbehavior prompts different kinds of misbehavior. So it's not just straight conformity that if you see a broken window, you're more likely to break a window, but rather if you see a broken window, you might be more likely to vandalize in different ways. And there are an interesting series of studies conducted in the Netherlands. On the left side, you can see a graffiti prohibited sign, and then the bikes parked there. The researchers put flyers on the handlebars that said "Happy Holidays." And then on the right side, the disorder condition, you still have that graffiti prohibited sign, but there is graffiti present. And when the researchers counted the number of flyers that were littered There's almost double the rate in the disorder condition. So interesting evidence that when we see examples of one type of misbehavior, people are likely to engage in different types of misbehavior. I also want to talk about the importance of having receptacles, not just present and readily available, but also nearby. Research that I conducted in across the country in collaboration with other psychology professors found that there's a big difference in the littering rates of settings where receptacles were available versus unavailable. And so in the sites where people did not litter, there were more receptacles available, and also they were a closer distance to the pedestrians than in the sites where people did litter. In this study, we did not intervene in any way. We were just observing pedestrians and waiting to see what they would do as they passed on by, and found that there was this strong effect for the availability of receptacles. Another study conducted at a college campus examined the influence of providing feedback on littering of cigarette butts and other litter, as well as receptacles. So in this sorry? In this study, they got baseline rates of the cigarette butts and other litter initially. Then they provided feedback in a campus magazine and also in a banner that was posted regarding the prevalence of littering, and that led to a slight reduction in littering. And then they added additional receptacles. They added ashtrays and more garbage cans, and found that that had a much bigger effect than the feedback. So we've got some really good evidence that availability of receptacles is a key factor in discouraging littering behavior. I also found some interesting studies that examined the role of lids on recycling. And in this experiment, they had 10 different sets of receptacles in a 5-story academic building. On the left, you've got the lid absent condition, and then on the right, you've got the lid present condition. So for the recycling containers, they had, you can see a circle to put a can or bottle in, and then for the paper, a small slot to recycle paper. And they measured the appropriateness of recycling as well as trash in the recycling containers, and found that, not surprisingly, that you've got more appropriate recycling when the lids were present, and then also a huge difference in the amount of trash in the recycling containers. So providing some good implications that just adding those different kinds of appropriate lids to the recycling containers cut down on the inappropriate trash in the recycling. And from here, I'd like to talk about messages. I was really impressed with the point that Amber made in her presentation that 75% of people in Washington don't litter. One key component of an effective message is to emphasize that most people are doing the right thing. Also, researchers have found that the more specific the message, the more effective it is. So it'd be more effective to say, put your garbage in the trash cans in this location, as opposed to saying don't litter. So the more specific the message, the more likely people are to follow them. And then also, there's been some interesting research on the influence of reactance, which involves feeling as though your freedom is being limited. And so signs that prompt reactants are likely to be ineffective. So these are kind of firm, authoritative messages. And I found a study that was done in Switzerland where they compared 3 different messages in railway stations. They had a humorous message, an authoritarian message, an environmental message, and then they also had a condition with no message posted at all. People who were in the train station were handed a flyer, and then the researchers counted the numbers of flyers that wound up on the ground depending on the type of message that was posted. And they found that the humorous and environmental messages had the best outcomes. The authoritarian was not so good, which was what they had expected, and the control was the highest rate of littering. The implications at the end of this article discussed the importance of maybe testing different types of humorous messages or different types of environmental messages, since these researchers only used one type. But I think the implications are that you definitely want to stay away from the authoritarian messages and try and go for something that's more positive and upbeat. The research that I have conducted, where my research assistants were trained to observe pedestrians in different settings all over the Northeast, one key guideline was that they had to be unobtrusive, because we were concerned that if pedestrians knew that their littering behavior was being observed, you would get very low rates of littering. So we tried to figure out a strategy to be unobtrusive, regardless of whatever setting we were in. And so when I was reading a journal article about putting watching eyes as a message, it reminded me of this instruction to be unobtrusive. It seems there's interesting research that using watching eyes has been effective in prompting all kinds of pro-social behaviors, including things like donating to charity. So I did find an experiment that used the watching eyes to test littering. This was conducted in a cafeteria where they considered littering to be people who left the cafeteria and left something behind on the table without cleaning up after themselves. They had 4 sets of male eyes and 4 sets of female eyes. And then they also manipulated the content of the message to either provide instructions, which is to clean your table, or they had a control message that just said that you should only be eating things that you purchased there. When they looked at the littering rates, I was really surprised to see such a strong effect for the eyes. They had a control condition where instead of eyes, they had flowers. Such a strong effect for the eyes and such a weak effect for the content of the message. And the researchers concluded that these watching eyes images are a very low cost, high impact opportunity to change behavior. And then finally, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's good evidence that bottle bills are linked to lower littering rates. I was interested to see that the Keep America Beautiful's most recent study examined states with and states without bottle bills. And not surprisingly, you get less litter of deposit items in the bottle bill states, but also that you get less litter of non-deposit items in the bottle bill states. So
Renee, 3 minutes left.
Okay, so this is, certainly just correlational. There could be other variables that coincide with having the bottle bill present, but I think it's something that could have really great implications. So overall, there's really interesting research to suggest that cleaning up public spaces, having receptacles available, and different types of lids depending on the type of recycling materials, messages that take advantage of norms, as well as those watching eyes, and trying to make headway on bottle bills are likely to be effective strategies. And that's it.
Great, thank you. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions about that. I already see a couple in there. So, all right. Up next, we have Olga Kachuk, and she is the Director of Bioeconomy and Reuse Initiatives at Green Blue.
Hello, everyone. Let me just get my screen share to get going. Let me see, 1 second. There we go. Can you see, unfortunately, I think you can see the top of my browser, but hopefully you shouldn't see any kind of notes or anything, right?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, good. So thanks for having me. My name is Olga Kachuk. I'm with a nonprofit called Green Blue, and we run the Sustainable Packaging Coalition. So I'm sort of going to talk to you about packaging from a little bit of a different perspective, packaging and how it contributes to litter. The Sustainable Packaging Coalition is a membership-based group of about 500 companies, really big brands that you've heard of, like Unilever, Mars, Heinz. So some of these brands who have products that may end up as litter, as well as retailers and the packaging upstream community manufacturers and converters that are creating packaging. And one of the things that I think that I've seen, I think my presentation might be a little bit different from what we've heard so far today, in the sense that there's definitely a lot of focus when it comes to litter around some of the bigger items like bottles, roadside litter with cans, bottles, bags, some of the bigger items where, there's a good sense that people intentionally threw something out, onto the road or left it behind. And the thing that I've found really interesting, that I've done some considering of, is smaller litter. Things that I don't think people intended to do or intended to litter, but that we still have nonetheless out in the environment that we have to address. So these are some pictures of litter I found on a hike. Really, pretty small, couple of inches in size, bits and pieces of packaging. You can see on the left produce stickers. The middle picture is a piece of a snack wrapper, and then another piece that was attached to some bigger, maybe juice carton or something like that. And I think this is in the past kind of gone a little bit under the radar, or hasn't been fully explored when we talk about litter prevention. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping to bring to you today. So I call all of these pieces litterable design. They're parts of packaging that are almost inevitably going to become litter based on the function or the size. And it's things like bottle caps. Most people are not intending, they're not screwing the cap off a bottle and then throwing it over their shoulder. It's getting separated from the bottle for very specific reasons and then ending up as litter. And you've probably seen some of the ocean cleanup data where bottle caps are a very common source of litter. So what's the reason for that, and how do we start to address some of these smaller pieces of litter? So there's sort of three categories that I think about. The first is tear to open, and this is the fact, if you think about many food wrappers or snack wrappers, granola bars, they're made out of multi-material flexible formats, and they are designed to have consumers rip off a serrated section to access the product. Juice box straws, snack pouches, candy wrappers, all of these use this type of design. And this creates what's known as, they're literally called tear-off bits that are lightweight and small, and it makes it really easy for these to slip out of someone's pocket or to blow away and eventually become litter. So I don't think that we don't have a lot of data on this, but I don't think consumers are intending to throw this piece of a granola wrapper off onto the ground. They probably ripped it off, put it in their pocket, and then it, sort of ended up on the ground. And even when well-intentioned consumers do put it in the garbage bin, it's really easy for these small pieces to be carried away by wind or rain and, to end up in the environment. So one of the things that that I've written about, and I think the call to action, the prevention piece here, is around better design. How is this really the best we can do from a design standpoint, and encouraging companies to think about other ways to design packaging so that they don't have these tear-off bits that are inevitably going to become litter, and they're not recyclable. There's not a lot of innovation out there at the moment that exemplifies sort of best-in-class alternatives to this. But we can start to think about other types of seals and closures and formats that don't require ripping pieces off of the package in order to be able to access the contents. But at the same time, you do need to think about protection and accessibility. A lot of some of these designs are maybe the way that they're currently designed, you can do it with one hand. You can maybe have limited, hand functionality to be able to open something, and you'd need to maintain that in a future package. Otherwise, you have issues with access. But I do believe that it's possible to move away from these tear to open formats, and that's something that we're hoping more and more brands start to think about, and something that I think we could really start to help brands consider as part of policy initiatives, which I will sort of get to towards the end of my talk. The other piece that is basically part of this category of litterable design, eventually, almost destined to become litter, is pieces that separate. So components of a package that twist off, that are, it's not just caps for bottled water, but juices, baby food, sometimes the inner seals of aseptic cartons, so like the band around the top of a cap. All of these are again likely to become litter because they separate from the main package. And I alluded to this earlier, but caps are number 4 on the 2020 list of most frequently littered items. And we don't, do we really have any strategies for addressing something that's that high on the list? I think one of the examples of a strategy for addressing this is legislation in the EU. So as part of their single-use plastics directive, they required tethered caps for bottles by 2024. And actually similar legislation was proposed in California in 2018. So companies have started to work to meet this EU requirement, and the technology is basically already available. I think, unfortunately, most companies haven't embraced it yet. It might still be more expensive. And so until we do see that to become more common, I think we're going to continue to see some of these rogue bottle caps in the environment. So this is what I mean by tethered design. It's when, the cap is attached to that seal, and it makes it less likely that it's going to pop off or, get lost or separate from the rest of the bottle. And, the other thing about this is you can think about maintaining some of the recyclability. So the cap is flexible, is recyclable in many communities if it's attached to the bottle. So rather than having them floating around at the bottom of someone's bin, having them attached to the bottle will help to make sure that material gets recycled. So this is a solution that I think is definitely a fairly ready swap. It just needs to be incentivized by more and more communities and encourage businesses through perhaps legislation to adopt this kind of thing. And then last but not least, the third category of litterable design is small accessories. So produce stickers are the classic example, but we also have bread bag ties, seals, twist ties. I saw this bread tag on the beach a little while ago. And these are small items. They're not recyclable, and they're often, set aside as consumers focus on accessing and enjoying the product, and then they don't have a place to put the accessory. So it's, you take off the sticker to enjoy your apple, and then you think, okay, I'm gonna put it away somewhere, and then, it blows away or you forget about it, and then it becomes litter. So instead of these, we're really left with two options: direct elimination or innovative elimination. So in some cases, you can, encouraging brands to think about simply removing that twist tie, that tag, that other component that's not recyclable and highly likely to become litter. In the case of produce stickers, where they serve an important function for labeling produce, the key sort of opportunity there is to move to compostable options. These do exist, but they are not yet widely adopted, mostly because they represent an increase in cost for companies. They have no incentive here in the US to do that, whereas in France, there's legislation that requires produce stickers to be compostable. So again, sort of looking to legislation to help drive the needle on some of these. And the other thing I've heard from brands is that, if they had a little bit of pressure from retailers, they would also be more likely to explore some of these changes to design. Right now, a lot of retailers have sort of remained silent on something like produce stickers. And so if they felt like they could get partnership or priority with a certain retailer because they had partnered, with a compostable sticker manufacturer, that would be another incentive for these brands to switch to something that's less likely to become litter, or at least has a home, as opposed to these current stickers today. So really, I think my main takeaway for everyone is that there are a number of contexts where litter is unintentional and the result of poor packaging design. I think we'd find that most people are not intending to litter this straw, sleeve. It has come separated from the juice box and sort of gotten out of hand. And so how can we think about using some different strategies to address this type of litter? It's going to take less, I think, messaging and working with consumers, and more working with brands and looking at ways to incentivize them to change their packaging design so that these components are less common, and that we can start to eliminate some of these, tear off bits and pieces that aren't part of a bigger package. So thanks very much for your time. I'm available if you have questions towards the end. And here is my, I think it's a little slow to load, my email address if you would like to get in touch.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of supporting comments and agreement on things people are seeing out there while you were talking. So that'll probably be a good conversation at the end. All right. Up next, we have Susan McCleary and Paige Morris. Susan is a senior program specialist with the City of Olympia, and Paige is environmental education program specialist with the City of Burien, and they're both on the Storm Steering Committee. And sorry, that's my dog snoring in the background.
Angela, can you start my video for me? It's not letting me do it.
Heather, can you do that since you're the host?
I just did ask to start
Okay.
video to you. Did that
Got
work?
it. It worked. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, and Susan, let me know if it's working okay.
Looks good, Paige.
Awesome. Take it away. Oh, I guess I'll introduce myself first. Hi, everyone. My name is Paige Morris. I work at the City of Burien, and my My title is Environmental Education Program Specialist, but I also work on our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System and PDES permit requirements. And I'm here today with Susan McCleary from the City of Olympia, and I'll pass it over to her to start the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for having us here today to talk about our dumpster lid campaign. And I work for the City of Olympia, and I am going to start off our presentation and then hand it off to Paige about midway. So I thought I'd start with the why today, and this will provide some context for the audience who are not as familiar with stormwater. So on a beautiful summer day like we're experiencing today, when the surface of the sound is sparkling, it's hard to concede that the health of Puget Sound is in serious trouble. Many of our iconic species, from our bull kelp and salmon to our orca and shellfish, are at risk from the impacts of polluted stormwater runoff. Next slide, please. In fact, most of the pollution reaching waterways in Puget Sound is carried there in stormwater. And that's why jurisdictions in Washington are required under the Clean Water Act and the Washington Pollution Control Act to manage and control stormwater runoff so it doesn't pollute downstream waters. This mandate is executed through the Department of Ecology's National Pollutant Discharge and Elimination System Municipal Stormwater Permit, and we've heard a little bit about that today. It's typically referred to as the MPDS permit, but for here on out for this presentation, we're just going to call it the permit. Next slide. So you might be wondering, what is the connection between dumpster lids, stormwater, and the permit? I'm going to explain. Open and leaking dumpsters can cause things like microplastics, litter, chemicals, bacteria, and nutrients to end up in stormwater runoff. So this happens when rainwater mixes with trash inside the dumpster, and it creates a nasty concoction, aka dumpster juice, which can leak out and spill onto parking lots and roads when dumpsters are serviced. And then when it rains, pollutants get washed into nearby storm drains, and eventually they're discharged into our shared watershed. Next slide. So to address this, between 2015 and 2019, 6 Western Washington cities conducted dumpster site observations or audits to understand and document the weight of the dumpster issue. And of 373 dumpsters, over a third, 128, had open or missing lids. And the sites where open lids were found were significantly more likely to have additional water quality issues compared to sites with closed lids. And you can see that in this picture here. There's lots of garbage and debris, bulky items all over the place. And oftentimes we would find overflowing grease containers and things like that. So in 2019, with the reissuance of the permit, many jurisdictions throughout Western Washington were eager to meet the education outreach behavior change requirement of the permit with a focus on dumpsters. Next slide, Paige. The process to develop a regional dumpster lid program began with the formation of the Dumpster Outreach Group, also known as DOG, with the purpose of developing a region-wide social marketing campaign. Organized by the DOG planning team and sponsored by the City of Bellevue, the Dumpster Summit workshop was held in the fall of 2020. It was led by social marketing expert Nancy Lee, and it brought together 25 municipalities for 4 days to develop a dumpster social marketing plan. The outcome of the summit was a plan focused on keeping commercial dumpster lids shut that could be adopted by multiple jurisdictions and be implemented broadly across the region. The multi-jurisdictional collaboration resulted in 3 really beneficial outcomes. And the first was regionally consistent messaging and graphics around dumpster area management, and then significant cost and staff time savings for jurisdictions. And probably most importantly, the relationship and coalition building that occurred as a result of this campaign. Next slide. Following the summit, the Dumpster Outreach Group, or DOG, continued to work with Nancy Lee and with C+E, a local social marketing agency, to develop and implement a pilot campaign strategy. It included an outreach toolkit, graphics, key messaging, creative concept and message testing, and a pilot evaluation plan. So during the dumpster summit, extensive audience research was done to find out what would motivate and prevent people who take out the trash to keep dumpster lids closed. And the 3 taglines that you see on the graphic at the bottom here of this art reflect the top 3 ideas our audience expressed would motivate them to close lids, and that's less smell, fewer pests, and no rain inside. Next slide, please. The pilot campaign outreach toolkit was developed to address audience motivators and barriers to closing lids, and it consisted of an array of social marketing tools categorized into 2 tiers. And the first tier included items that were recommended and provided to all the participating jurisdictions, which were signs, posters, dumpster stickers, and brochures. And then the 2 second tier items were optional, and jurisdictions were encouraged to try these, which included window clings and pledges, step stool discounts, tools for lids, box cutters, and waste management consultation. Next slide, page. So after all this preparation and planning, the pilot campaign was launched in April of 2021 by all of the participating jurisdictions, and the pilot ran through October of 2021. A robust evaluation component was built into the pilot, and it included baseline, start, intermittent, and final data collection. And pilot data from the jurisdictions across the region was aggregated and analyzed so that the information could be used to guide our broad scale implementation of the campaign. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Paige, and she's going to share with you goals and outcomes.
Great. Thanks, Susan.
Yeah.
So I'm going to really quickly cover some of our campaign goals and the outcomes of the dumpster lid campaign. Like Susan described earlier, we had 3 major goals. The first was to develop a behavior change campaign that encourages both the business owners and staff to shut the dumpster lid every time they took out the trash or recycling every time. This would meet our jurisdiction's permit requirements for education and outreach. The second goal was to create regionally consistent messaging for businesses and inspectors to address common dumpster issues found during inspections, such as the amount of litter, like Susan pointed out in some of the images beforehand. And then finally, the third goal was to protect water quality by reducing sources of stormwater pollution from occurring around dumpsters. So when we were conducting the pilot campaign, like was described in several other presentations today, the pilot campaign was a critical step in both the traditional social marketing as well as community-based social marketing. The piloting of the campaign provided an opportunity to evaluate the effectiveness of social marketing strategies and adapt them before our broad-scale implementation. Some of our key campaign outcomes included dumpster lid closures significantly improved from campaign outreach. You can see here that the percentage of dumpster lids closed rose from 49% to 77% over the course of our pilot. We had over 30 jurisdictions participate for the campaign, which helped us realize substantial cost savings due to the economy of scale. About 150 businesses throughout the region were provided education and outreach materials for the dumpster lid campaign, and over 100 dumpster areas across the Puget Sound were evaluated before and after the pilot. One outcome I wanted to point out really quickly was that the artwork actually changed from our pilot to our broad scale implementation. The initial artwork is still available, and we'll be sharing the link to our website at the end of this for anyone to use, but we know that the artwork needed some extra work. Some jurisdictions have green dumpsters that are for garbage, and some have green for other kinds of waste. So we knew the dumpster had to change colors. We also wanted to add the physical image of someone trying to shut the dumpster lid. And then finally, we wanted to add that different languages to the sticker and sign so that it could be read in multiple languages. So finally, some conclusions about our dumpster pilot. We saw that there was a region-wide benefit. We know that people move throughout our region. Sorry, I'm noticing my video is slowing, so I'll just turn it off for a sec. So we know that there was a region-wide benefit to the program because we know that people don't live and work in the same location. Having 30 different jurisdictions with this broad scale campaign helped us realize a more consistent message across the region. Secondly, the collaborative efforts across participating jurisdictions helped to make this campaign a huge success. Businesses received consistent messaging from local jurisdiction staff, and local communities had the opportunity to create cleaner, healthier areas, allowing them to feel a sense of pride in their location.
American Dream LLC online adjustment.
Finally, I wanted to share a couple quick resources for y'all if you're interested in learning more. Jurisdictions are continuing with the campaign as of right now, and located on the screen here, you can see a screenshot of our website, which we'll put in the chat for y'all to take a look at the end. If you're interested in learning more about the program, you can reach out to myself, Susan, or Lori Devereaux, whose contact information is on the website. And I believe that that's all we have for you today. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. That was good with the distractions in the background.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. Okay, so I see there's been a lot of chatter throughout this session, but there haven't really been questions. So if you have a question, you can go to the reactions button at the bottom and click raise hand if you'd like to ask yourself, or you can type a question into the chat. So Heather Trim is asking, what is the cost of the dumpster program?
So I can answer that, Paige. So for the pilot program, the cost to develop the campaign and buy those initial set of materials, which we gave to all the participating jurisdictions, was about $69,000. So, and contributions were made from various jurisdictions that were a part of the campaign. And so that made it really affordable. And then we were able, some of the jurisdictions, smaller jurisdictions, which really didn't have funding available, to like hire a consultant to develop a strategy like this, really benefited from this in terms of being able to, be in this program with us and get all the benefits from it and provide input, but not have to spend a big chunk of money for a consultant.
Okay, and I'm going to come back to your next question, Heather, and go back to Renee's question. She's asking, she said she's wondering why the pilot group had higher rates of lids being closed at baseline. Any thoughts?
So I have the slide up right here. I could reshare it again if that helps. But at baseline, the pilot group had 49% of their lids closed. And at the end, that same group, it rose to 77%. So maybe that wasn't clear. On the side of that, there was a control group that was not given any of the materials. So their closure rate roughly stayed the same throughout the entire pilot at around 40%. So maybe that is where the confusion came from.
I was just wondering, it looked in that graph like the control group had lower rates of keeping the lids down at baseline than the pilot group.
Susan, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, that does look like that, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. But I know that our valuation period was for baseline was over a period of 2 weeks. So maybe it was just a random thing that they actually ended up closing their lids more than the actual businesses that were used for the pilot. That's what I'm assuming.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we have a question for Olga. Do you sense that companies are moving to redesign in the US already?
I think that the answer is no, especially I think of all of the three categories, the most likely is caps. And I think until they're required to, I don't think that they really will. or, you know, there's just not a lot of incentive there. I think caps are on their radar, and the opportunity to do tethered caps is something that companies, especially, you know, if they're multinational, they're aware of. If EPR bills start to move them in that direction, that could be another opportunity. But I haven't seen a lot of innovation on the tear off format side of things. Possibly some of those could be covered by brands more and more moving to paper-based packaging. And so paper, I think in general, like it requires a little bit of a different design than your typical granola bar with the corner that you tear off. So as part of that, there may be a kind of co-benefit of having fewer plastic bits that come off because the package itself is like a paper package. But really, I think a lot of brands are going to need the nudge of legislation to really, you know, change their design, knowing that it's required or that they're going to get some kind of brownie points in an EPR system for doing that.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that might be a good thing to talk about during our policy breakout session tomorrow. Okay, so Renee, Heather says she loves the studies that you've talked about so far. What's next on your what's your next research project on litter?
Well, I'm currently working on a project to increase heat pumps in upstate New York for energy conservation. But I would be interested in testing strategies to change norms about littering using social media. So that might be something that I'd be interested in, applying that normative component to social media.
Okay. Susan and Paige, Amanda from Vancouver wants to know if you can say more about the step stool discount. And did businesses request smaller dumpsters so that staff could more easily close the lids?
I did not have any businesses requesting smaller dumpsters, but we did offer a waste management consultation so that businesses could try to get a smaller dumpster because it is a big cost savings for them. As far as the step stool rebate, some of the jurisdictions produce those for their own jurisdictions, not all did, and I'm happy to share that information with you if you'd like to see it. I actually didn't have anyone take me up on it. I was really surprised because I thought that I would. It was a pretty good rebate, but nobody took advantage of it. But we did see other tools that people were using, just random things like 2x4s and things like that, that people would just put in their dumpster area to help push that lid shut, because we knew that was one of the barriers.
I'm sure OSHA would love that. All right, thank you. Let's see. I guess this is for Amber. Garrett would like to know, he's thinking of covering loads. Do any transfer stations in Washington have a surcharge if people come to the dump without having their load covered? Or maybe a discount if they do have it covered well?
Yeah, so right now there is an RCW that it's Washington state law that if you have a transfer station, you're supposed to have local ordinances requiring people to come in there with a secured load and have a fee that would be charged to unsecured loads coming into the solid waste facility. So that's Washington state law. Not all local governments have something on the books. And many do have an unsecured load fee, but not all of them enforce that fee. So it's really a mix. There are some cities and counties that every single unsecured load that comes in, they're going to get that fee. Others, it's a mix. A lot of the local governments we've been working with, we're trying to get them to do education first and then start implementing those fees for that Make Me group.
Okay, and then you have another question. Do you have any data results from the Secure Your Load campaign and what percentage of loads are being secured?
Yeah, we collected, so last year we worked with 4 counties. This year we worked with another 3 counties. They all collected data on the percent of unsecured loads coming into their solid waste facilities. There was quite a range. We're still compiling data from this year. Last year, I think there was an average of around 25% of the loads coming into the solid waste facilities were not secure, but there was one county where it was as high as up to 60% of the loads coming in were not secure. So unsecured loads are a huge problem in the state, but it does vary county to county, facility to facility.
And I have another one for you from Renee. And I was kind of wondering this too when it was on your slide. She said she's interested in hearing more about the Tim recently stopped littering message.
Hey, that is a super funny commercial. If you go to litterfreewa.org/simple, you'll go to that Simple as That campaign page, and that new commercial is embedded on that page. It definitely uses humor. Our priority audience really like the use of humor. And the simple message, it made people realize that it's a big problem with a simple solution, and it didn't leave them feeling guilty. So we tested a bunch of messages, again, kind of echoing what Renee found, that more positive messaging, humor goes a long way. Don't have the strong punitive language, and don't leave people feeling guilty or like you're taking away their choices. And so, yeah, that new commercial is really, really funny. He's like, Tim, the local hero, stops littering, and he's like, yeah, I just put my coffee cup in my litter bag. It's pretty funny. So check it out online.
All right, we are almost through the questions. So King County says they do charge a $25 unsecured load fee. It sounds like a good way to make a little extra money. And Susan says that open bed commercial trucks wrapped in plastic, that comes with, oh yes, I hate being behind those when I'm driving. Let's see what else. That question was answered itself. Are there any other questions people have? I think that was a good variety of questions for everyone.
And I see somebody is asking what county had the 60% unsecured loads. That was Klickitat County. They participated in our pilot last year. And that plastic does fly off. You'll have a presentation tomorrow on the litter study and our initial results, and plastic wrap is definitely showing up.
Is the fine for unsecured loads high enough?
It would be, there's no standard. In some counties, it's much higher. In other counties, it's very small. I think you'd have to talk to those individual communities and do a little mini study to see what feels like it's big enough to deter the Make Me group from coming in. There's also concern of people feeling like they would rather go and do illegal dumping than come into the facility. And so I know there's a lot of balancing that goes on there, but in some places it's probably not high enough. In other places it's probably sufficient enough to get people to think twice and take a little more time to do it.
Okay, and then there's a lot of people are concerned about unsecured loads. So does anyone enforce the law in regard to unsecured loads?
Yeah, so the Washington State Patrol and local law enforcement do enforce Washington's litter laws, including the secured load requirement. So there's and that's something that we evaluate to our partnership with law enforcement, and how the number of citations, is that going up or down. And but yeah, they look for that all the time. There's also commercial vehicle division that at the State Patrol that looks just for those larger commercial vehicles as well. And I know the local waste haulers are also working with their drivers on this issue as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I am not seeing any more questions. So if that's all we have for now, we can close out for the day.